Hi everybody, I hope this video finds you well. In today's video, we're going to introduce our course and go over the syllabus for our class. My name is Ben Mitchell, and I'll be your instructor for the Fall 2020 term for Math 191, Single Variable Calculus 2. Our class is a fully online asynchronous course, so in this video not only will we be discussing the standard syllabus, but I will also spend a little bit of time discussing the general structure of our course. Let's start with some essential core information. First of all, as I said, my name is Ben Mitchell. Our course is Math 191, Single Variable Calculus 2, and our section number is 0952. Let's talk about points of contact. How can you get a hold of me if you have questions during our course? Well, first and foremost, you can see that each week we'll have online office hours via Zoom. The times for these are Monday, 2 to 3 p.m., and Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. On the day of each of these meetings, which will occur each week, you guys will receive a reminder email with the link to the Zoom meeting sent to your ECC email. When we get close to exams, there might be additional online office hour times, but know for a fact that every week on the dot, these two times will always be available for you guys to hop on and ask any questions you might have. Monday, 2 to 3 p.m., Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you can't hop on for online office hours, or if you have a question that arises sometime not very close to those two online office hour times, you can always send me a direct email at bmitchell@elcamino.edu. The third and final way of sort of contacting me during the semester, if you can't make it to online office hours or if you don't want to send a direct email, is making use of the discussion boards on our Canvas webpage. As we'll discuss a little bit later in this video, a lot of the content and the information that you'll need for our class is going to be found on our Canvas webpage. Also included on that Canvas webpage are discussion boards for all the sets of suggested exercises, the quizzes, the review guides for exams. Pretty much for anything that you guys are working on, there'll be a discussion board that you can post and get answers from either your fellow classmates or from me on. I highly recommend making use of the discussion boards. One is because they help simulate what we would have if we were meeting in person, which would be that you guys would be able to discuss some of the things we're talking about in our course between each other. And on a sort of similar note, if you post on the discussion board, then when you get a response, either from one of your classmates or from myself, when you get the information that explains whatever your question was, not only are you benefiting from it, but anybody who goes on and reads that discussion chain will also benefit from it. It's just like if you were asking a question in class. When you ask a question in class in person, not only do you get the answer, but the entire class gets to hear that sort of discussion. So just as a sort of recap, we've got three main ways of contacting or getting your questions answered during the semester. Online office hours, Monday from 2 to 3 p.m., Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. every week. You have my direct email, bmitchell@elcamino.edu, and you also have Canvas discussion boards for all the sort of major assignments, practice problems, everything we're working on. All right, let's go ahead then and talk a little bit about what our class actually is. As I mentioned, our class is Math 191, which is Single Variable Calculus 2. This class is an immediate follow-up to Math 190 Calculus 1. In fact, if you just finished taking 190, you probably just finished with Chapter 5 from the Stewart Calculus textbook, and our class picks up immediately with Chapter 6. So this really is a continuation of what you were doing in Calculus 1. Overall, in our class, we're going to be focusing a lot on integration, and then we'll be talking about sequences and series, and then we'll be talking about calculus in other coordinate systems. The sort of driving theme, which we'll discuss a little bit more in the sort of introduction into the actual content of our class, is all going to be about accumulation. If you think back to what you were covering in your Math 190, your Single Variable Calculus 1 course, you mostly were studying sort of what happens with the infinitesimal. You studied concepts like the limit and the derivative, which was all about what happens when you get infinitesimally close to something, right? So basically you were studying what happens with the rate of change when you get infinitesimally close, or what happens as you approach a limit point as you get infinitesimally close. In our course, we're going to extend that concept to talking about accumulation. Most of the topics we're going to be discussing all center around accumulating an infinite amount of infinitesimally small things and trying to study how those two concepts, something very, very small but an infinite amount of them, balance out. So that's really sort of the core concept that motivates most of our class. There's a description here of our course in terms of the actual topics. You can read through that if you like, but of course those things will make more sense as we begin into our class. So let's talk a little bit about what you're required to have for our course. First of all, we do have a required text. You do need this textbook for the course. It's Calculus Early Transcendental by James Stewart, the 8th edition. Couple quick notes here is if you just finished taking Calc 1 or 190 with us at El Camino, then you use the same book for 190. If you're taking 220 as a follow-up to our course Math 191, you will continue to use this book. So having the Stewart 8th edition is hopefully the book you were just using, and it's going to be the book for this course and the next one after it. So definitely a good idea to have this textbook. You do need to make sure that you have the 8th edition of this textbook. As probably a lot of you guys know, every time they change editions, they change the problem sets and everything. I have gone through and picked out quite a few exercises from the textbook that I think are worth your time and your attention to do. That's why it's so important to have this edition, so that the ones that I picked out are actually the ones that I looked at and know are good ones for you guys to try. There's many different versions of the textbook in terms of online with access code, all that stuff. It doesn't matter if you have a hard copy or if you find an ebook version. As long as it's the Stewart 8th edition textbook, you'll be all good. You don't need any online access code. We're not using any sort of thing like My Math Lab or anything like that, so you don't need to pay anything extra to get online access, even if there's a version that offers that. In terms of other required materials, that's pretty much it. You just need the textbook for this class. A calculator is permitted, but not required. We're not going to be doing a lot of intensive computational stuff, like a lot of arithmetic, so there won't really be any need for a calculator. If you have one and you want to use it, you're welcome to do so, but it's not going to be really necessary, and it's certainly not required. Following along on the syllabus here, you can see that there's a bunch of course objectives and student learning outcomes. You can certainly read through these if you want sort of a preview of what we're going to be covering in the course. Personally, I recommend looking back over these course objectives and learning outcomes either midway through the course or near the end of our class. I think it's sort of satisfying to, once you've taken a few weeks of our class, be able to go back, read through this, and realize that you really are capable of doing all these things now that you have learned all these different concepts. Right now, they might not mean too much, though they could give you a bit of a preview into what we're doing. Instead of going right onto the next page of our syllabus, what I would like to do a little bit of is talk a little bit about our main sort of way of getting the information to you guys, which is making use of our Canvas site. So let's take a look at our Canvas site and discuss a little bit about that. So this is the front page of our Canvas site that we're going to be making a lot of use of during our semester. If you want to access this, all you need to do is go to your My ECC, and it should be right there. There should be home pages for each of the courses that you're enrolled in, and of course ours is the Math 191-0952. The front page of your Canvas site here is your syllabus, so if you ever need to reference anything, or if you forget what time the office hours are, or any of the sort of key details, whenever you go to this page, it'll always direct you immediately to the syllabus. What else is on our Canvas page? Well, we've got a lot of different features that we'll be using here, and I'd like to talk about each of them. First of all, we will be making use of the announcement section of Canvas. On the announcement section, I'll just let this load right here. There's a couple initial announcements already. There's also a reminder that there's a meet and greet on Monday, August 24th from 2 to 3 p.m., which is when your normal office hours would be held. That's a chance if you want to ask any questions after you've watched this syllabus video about the general structure of our course. You can hop on, introduce yourself, and ask any of those questions. So this announcement section, as its name would imply, is very important for our class because it's going to be where all the announcements for our class end up. When there's things coming up that are going to be due, or if exams or anything like that are coming up, I'll always make sure to send out announcements reminding you about those upcoming deadlines. At the beginning of each week, so usually on Sunday night or Monday morning, I will post a schedule for what you should try to accomplish for the upcoming week through this announcements page. So again, any of the sort of major announcements can be found on this announcements page of Canvas. What else do we have on Canvas? Well, there's an assignments tab. The assignments tab is also going to be used for us. The assignments tab is where you will submit your solutions to all the different sorts of assignments we have, quizzes, exams, etc. There's already a little sample test assignment for you guys to try to make sure you're comfortable submitting through Canvas. If you click on that assignment, one thing that I do want to just call your attention to is that while we will be using the assignment tab for uploading the solutions, the questions, the actual what do you need to do in each assignment, is not actually in the assignment section. The assignment section is exclusively used for you guys to submit your work. So where do you actually find the questions or whatever's being asked in a given assignment? Well, if you notice, it says right here on the test assignment that you look in the file section of Canvas for the document labeled Math 191 test assignment, and you follow the directions there. So for quizzes, exams, you'll always find the actual questions in the files section of Canvas, and the actual submissions, though, will go through the assignment tab. So let's jump ahead and take a look at that file section. So the Files tab of Canvas is going to be probably your most frequently used. This is where we're going to have folders for all the electronic documents you need for the class. As you can see here, there's going to be things like review questions from Math 190, quiz and exam solutions. Once you guys start taking assessments, the solutions to those assessments will be posted here. Review guides for exams, the suggested exercises, both the ones that I write and the ones from the textbook can be found here. Another copy of your syllabus, the take-home exams, the take-home quizzes, and your test assignment. All of these can be located here. One that I would like to call special attention to is the sort of fourth folder there, which says Office Hour Notes. Once our semester gets started, if you're unable to attend an online office hour session that you wanted to make it to, or if you need to leave early or something like that, you can always check the Office Hour Notes folder, and I'll always be posting the PDFs and slides of whatever we talked about during the Zoom office hours. So if you miss an online office hour that you really wanted to attend, you can always check the Office Hour Notes folder for whatever we discussed during that online office hour. So this is the idea here, is that even if you can't make it to those online office hours, you can still see what we discussed and hopefully benefit from that. All right, let's pop back a little bit and continue on in order now that we've seen the file section, which is of course one of the major tabs you're going to be using on the Canvas page. We'll also take a quick look at the discussions page. You'll notice that the discussions page has a little section about general course questions. There will also be discussion boards once our term actually starts for all the different sets of suggested exercises, for the take-home quizzes, for review guides, any of the sort of big documents or things that you guys are working on. There'll be a discussion board that you can post your questions about. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I highly recommend making use of the discussion boards, mainly because not only are you going to benefit from them, but by asking your questions and having a discussion about whatever topics you're not quite sure about, it's going to benefit everybody else. Even if they're not directly posting or answering the questions, they can at least read the discussions there. Sometimes if you guys send me an email and I think that you asked an important content question, I'll sometimes post my actual response even to a direct email onto the discussion boards, again, so that other people can sort of benefit from those. Obviously, there are some questions that might be, sort of personal or private in nature that you need to ask about. Those are always fine to, of course, just directly email. Avoid posting those on the discussion boards. But anything that's content related, I'd really strongly recommend making use of our discussion boards. What else do we have on Canvas? Well, there's also a Canvas tab for your guys' grades, so you'll be able to keep track of grades for all the assignments. And, as we'll talk about in just a moment when we return to the syllabus, we use in this class weighted percentages for the different classes of assignments, and Canvas actually takes care of doing that weighting for us. So you can not only monitor how you're doing on each individual assignment, but Canvas will actually tell you how your overall grade is looking for our class. So that's pretty much all the tabs that we're going to be making use of. So again, we'll often make use of the announcements, the assignments, discussions, grades, and files section of Canvas. Of course, you can also take a look at our syllabus because that's the home page as well as being in the files section. Speaking of the syllabus, let's go back and continue on to actually talking about the course policies, how the grades are calculated, and some of the important dates and requirements for our course. So let's go on to page 2 of our syllabus. So grading policies. Everybody's always interested in how grades are determined, so let's take a look at this. First of all, grades are determined by the breakdown of 4 major classes of assignments. You guys will have 4 take-home quizzes during the term, 3 midterms, 3 take-home exams, and a comprehensive final. The quizzes make up 20% of your grade, the midterms 30%, the take-home exams 30%, and the comprehensive final 20%. We use a standard grading scale, so at the end, after weighting according to these percentages, if your grade is in the 90 to 100% range, it's an A, 80 to 89, it's a B, 70 to 79, C, 60 to 69, D, and 59% and below, F. So a standard grading scale. Let's talk about each of the classes of assignments. The first, quizzes. There's going to be 4 quizzes during the term. When you work on the quizzes, you guys are welcome to work in groups of up to 3. The groups are very flexible. At the beginning of the term, if you decide that you want to work individually, but by the midway point of the term you've gotten to know some of the other people and you want to work with them, you certainly can. If at the beginning of the term you find a couple people that you want to work with, but by the middle of the term your schedules are different or you're just unable to collaborate easily, then you can go back to working individually. It's very flexible. It's always what is easiest for you guys. The only rules for working in groups is that the groups can be a maximum of 3 people. And if you do work as a group, you submit one set of answers. So all the group members submit one set of answers and you're all going to receive the same grade. Whoever takes care of the responsibility of submitting the answers, though, does need to make sure that they name everybody that they collaborated with. Quizzes have a very easy structure for when they're due. They're going to be due on the Tuesdays of week 4s, 8, 12, and 16. So every 4 weeks you'll have a quiz due. The quizzes are going to be submitted via Canvas as a single PDF document. That's why we have a test assignment up right now on Canvas, is to make sure you're comfortable submitting things as a single PDF. I have a little electronic submission guideline that I also post on Canvas that helps you guys identify some apps that can be very useful for scanning documents and putting things into a single PDF. I highly recommend reading through that and practicing to make sure you're comfortable just building your submission file. Canvas is always going to require that your submission is a single PDF file, so you want to make sure you're comfortable doing that. Submissions that are late or in incorrect format will be penalized. The reason that the submission guidelines are so important in this class is that grading online assessments is very challenging to give you guys good feedback. In person, you would turn in a physical paper. I'd be able to write comments to you and you'd get it back. Here, things are a little bit harder. So by having this very strict format of a single PDF file, it'll be easier for me to give you guys some comments so you can get good feedback about the things you're doing right, the things that need to be sort of tightened up, and anything that you need to sort of correct. All the details about electronic submissions can be found on Canvas, and if you can complete the test assignment, then you should be good, making sure you can submit things as a single PDF file. What are the point of these quizzes in our course? Well, the quizzes are really used to check in for the basic skills that we're developing in each quarter of our class. Quizzes are basically computational in nature. They're just really stressing the major computational things that we covered in each section of our course. The second sort of component of your grade, or the second class of assignments that we'll be having, are midterms. We have 3 midterms, and the dates for the 3 midterms are already set in stone. They're on the Thursdays of weeks 4, 8, and 12. So you'll notice that those weeks 4, 8, 12, and 16 are really important ones. They're not only the weeks that you'll be turning in quizzes, but they're also the weeks you'll be taking your midterm exams. Midterms will be made available on Canvas at 9 a.m., and they'll be due by 5 p.m. They're going to be submitted the same way, meaning that you'll submit the solutions as a single PDF file through Canvas. When you're working on your midterms, you're going to be allowed access to your notes since you'll be working from home. So definitely make sure to take good notes and organize your notes well, because they're going to be useful to you on every assignment you do in this class. When you're working on the midterms, unlike the quizzes, you won't be allowed to discuss or work with anyone else. So in the quizzes, even if you choose to submit your work by yourself, you can certainly discuss your answers with everyone else in the class. For midterms, though, not only do you need to work individually, you can't discuss what you're doing with anybody else. Once again, midterms will be submitted electronically via Canvas and must be submitted as single PDF files. No makeup exams are going to be given. If, however, you do miss an exam due to an emergency, or one of the exams simply does not go as well as you were hoping, one midterm score can be replaced by the final exam score if the final exam score is higher. So in other words, if it's beneficial to your guys' grade, I will replace your lowest midterm score, or a missing midterm score if there's an emergency, with your final exam score. The point of the midterms are to assess the major skills and concepts in each section of our course. Each midterm is self-contained, so that first midterm you'll take on Thursday of week 4, it'll cover everything we do in weeks 1 through 4. That second midterm that you take in week 8 covers everything we do from weeks 5 through 8. And the third midterm that you take in week 12 will cover everything from weeks 9 through 12. The third major component of your grade comes from what are called take-home exams. Now, the name take-home exams might not be great in given our current situation. Everything you guys are doing are technically you're taking home or you're doing it from home. But the reason I call it take-home exams is that take-home exams, even if we were meeting in person, would still be given to you to take home. So, following each midterm, there will be a take-home exam portion. It'll cover the same material as the midterm, but it's sort of a different format for the exam. The take-home exams are much, much more theoretical in nature. In other words, they're testing the major theoretical concepts of the section. So you'll have a bit more time to do them. Instead of having that window of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on those Thursdays, you'll have about 1 week to complete each take-home exam. Sometimes it'll be a week, sometimes it'll be 10 days. It'll vary from assignment to assignment. Each take-home exam will be due by 11:59 p.m. on the day that it is due. For the take-home exams, you're certainly welcome to discuss them with other students in your class. But unlike the quizzes, you will need to submit your own work. So take-home exams, you're certainly welcome to discuss them. I actually really recommend that you discuss them amongst one another because they are theoretical in nature. It really benefits to have those discussions to make sure you're thinking about the things in the right way, but everybody's going to need to write up their own work. Take-home exams, just like everything else in our class, are going to be submitted electronically via Canvas as a single PDF file. Lastly, the very last component of our class is the final exam. The final exam is a cumulative or comprehensive exam, meaning it'll cover everything from what we talk about in week 1 all the way to what we're talking about in weeks 15 and 16. It'll be held on the last day of class, which for us is Thursday, December 10th. In structure, the final exam is pretty similar to a midterm, it's just a bit longer. So it will be available at 9 a.m. and it'll be due 12 hours later by 9 p.m. Once again, just like all the assignments for our class, you're going to be allowed access to your notes for the final exam. So it's really important to make sure you take good notes, you organize them well, and they're beneficial to you. When you're working on the final exam, the same policies as the midterms will hold. You won't be allowed to discuss or work on the final exam with anyone else in your class or outside of the class. Your final exam will be submitted just like everything else, via Canvas and as a single PDF file. All right, so as a quick summary there, we've got 4 sort of components to our class. Quizzes every 4 weeks, midterms every 4 weeks, take-home exams that follow up those midterms, and then a comprehensive or cumulative final at the very end of our class. Usually at this point, if we were meeting in person, this would be where somebody would ask about extra credit. In our class, there won't be any extra credit assignments. However, every individual assignment, quizzes, midterms, take-home exams, comprehensive final, they'll usually have at least 1 extra credit question attached to them. So while you should not expect any separate extra credit assignments, you should expect that everything you do always has at least a little bit of extra credit potentially available. It's really important in our class because there are some very theoretical concepts that we'll be discussing in our class, and sometimes those extra credit questions are a way for me to be able to ask you guys about some of those things and extend them a little further than would normally be covered in our course. All right, let's talk about some general requirements, the structure of our class, and some important dates. So, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that our class is fully online, which we've talked a lot about, but I also said that it was asynchronous. So we need to talk a little bit about what that means. In terms of being asynchronous, our class basically means that instead of having any scheduled lecture times, all the lecture material that you will need for our class is going to be presented through videos posted on YouTube. There's a playlist on my YouTube channel that you should already have the link to, named Math 191 Fall 2020. That's where all the videos for your class can be found. I'll update you guys regularly about what videos have been posted on there. I'm not just going to put up every video immediately. I'll put them up in sort of batches. And I'll also be posting in the announcements section of Canvas a schedule for what you should watch each week to keep up with the pace of our course. Associated with the lecture videos are generally named by the sections from the textbook. Should be very easy to match up what's being covered in my lecture videos to what's being covered in your textbook. But you'll also want to make sure that you look at the suggested exercises, the ones that I write, as well as the ones that I've chosen from your textbook. If you watch the videos, read through the textbook, and try those exercises, then you should definitely be comfortable with the things that we're covering in our class. It's really recommended that you do as many of the problems as possible because, again, watching the video lectures, it's a great passive learning experience, but you definitely need, especially in a class like Math 191, an active learning experience as well. And that means sitting down and trying as many of the examples as possible. Second sort of general requirement here that we talked a lot about is that all the documents, so the documents for quizzes, documents for exams, documents for exercises, everything can be found on our Canvas site. So definitely make sure you are checking that file section and making sure you're getting everything you need for the class there. Remember also in terms of like reminding you about certain things that have been posted or about what you need to be accomplishing, right? There's always the announcement section that'll be sort of giving you those schedules, also letting you know what's been posted, what's new on our Canvas webpage. The third major requirement here, again, remember all the assignments for this class are going to be submitted electronically. They're all going to be submitted through Canvas as single PDF files. Again, I know it's a relatively sort of strict format to be doing here, but it's going to make it possible for me to actually give you feedback about your sort of assignments and make it a lot easier for me to actually look through, give you those assessments, and steer you in the right direction there. The fourth thing here, which is sort of just a quick reminder, is that do keep in mind that since our class is completely online, actually being able to ask questions or get help is a little bit different. Here are again the three major ways for you to do that. Remember, there's a couple hours each week where you can hop on through Zoom and join online office hours so you can have a live discussion of what we're covering in the class. Those online office hours are informal, so you can feel free to ask anything you like. It can just be a question from the lecture material, a question about the suggested exercise, a question about a quiz that you're working on, whatever you want to sort of ask about. Remember, on the morning of each of those office hours, you'll receive a reminder email with the meeting link. The second major component, which again I've sort of talked a lot about, are the Canvas discussion boards. These are again there to try to simulate the discussions we would have in class, and the ability that if we were in person, you'd be able to turn around, talk to somebody really briefly about whatever you're working on or the upcoming quiz or whatever. The discussion boards should try to simulate that. And then finally, remember, I'm always available directly through email at bmitchell@elcamino.edu. A couple important dates for our class here and here. First, the first drop deadline, which is the chance to drop the course without any sort of notation and for a full refund, is Sunday, September 6th. That's the Sunday after week 2. So if you're a little unsure about the online format, you can take a couple weeks, see how it sort of feels, and then make your decision there. The second sort of major deadline here is Friday, November 13th. That is the last day to withdraw from the class and receive a W. This is if you're sort of unhappy with how you sort of performed in the class or how your grade is sitting at, and you want to avoid a grade that you're not happy with, you have to drop the course by Friday, November 13th. The good thing for you guys there is that that Friday, November 13th is the Friday after week 12, so you will have been able to take all 3 of your midterm exams by that time. You should have a very good sense of where you stand in the class by the time you have to make that decision. Finally, and very important right here, got to remember that since, again, we are online, all the announcements and all the sort of key information are issued to you electronically. That means you need to make sure that you regularly check your El Camino email as well as regularly checking our Canvas page. Generally, for announcements or updates, I try to always double send everything, meaning that I'll generally post it on Canvas as an announcement and then send an email with the same information. I know that sometimes is repetitive or it feels like I'm spamming you guys with the same stuff, but again, it's just to make sure that in case you don't check one of those two things, or you forget to look at your email, or you forget to look at Canvas, the other source will hopefully catch you there. So again, a lot of times you'll see sort of the same information sent to you about updates or about deadlines, but it's just to make sure that everybody gets that information. So make sure you get into the habit of regularly checking your El Camino email. Make sure you get in the habit of regularly checking our Canvas page. This pretty much wraps up introducing our course. In the next video, we'll actually get into the content of our class, beginning with a quick review of Math 190, your single variable calculus, talking a little bit about basic differentiation, basic integration, and then we'll get into the real content of our course, starting with section 6.1 from your textbook, the area between two curves.